Welcome back on our channel. I'm Wojtek and we are in the Hertz recording studio where I have recorded and produced bands such as Behemoth, Decapitated, Vader and many more. Today I'm going to explore how to create a great snare drum sound for the iconic song Smell Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana, using, of course, our Hertz drums. Let's check it. Let's start by finding the snare drum tuning in this song. A very common mistake when reproducing snare drum sound is starting with using an EQ to match the snare drum sound from a favorite recording. In my opinion, it's much easier to match the snare drum sound by starting with analyzing the tuning of the snare drum and then transferring that tuning to the Hertz drum's snare. You don't need to have perfect pitch hearing to do this. Just open up an analyzer and see which frequency in the snare drums stands out the most. The original snare drum has a dominant low tone at around 195 Hz. Now I will try to match the pitch of the snare drum. In this case, I use the aluminum snare drum from Metal Unlimited pack. Using pitch slider on the snare channel, I'm trying to pitch my snare to the same fundamental frequency like the original one. This snare drum already has a pitch that is practically identical to the one in the song Smell Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana, so it only needs to be tuned up slightly. Let's listen to how it sounds in the mix now. Sounds pretty cool. Let's move forward to next step, which is setting up the Hertz drums plugin. As I mentioned before, I choose the aluminum snare from our pack, which is a vintage Ludwig Supraphonic, recorded using an SM57. I reverse the phase to achieve more edge sound. After changing the phase, we hear less low end. And now listen to the original Nirvana track. And compare with our drums again. Original snare has more compression. I also can hear more springs from the snare. To achieve similar tone, I created additional snare sample, which will be mixed with our Ludwig Supraphonic snare. I assigned that sample on the Cobble channel. I did the sample from the Black Beauty snare from our Red pack. I compressed a lot of ambience, FX, and the bottom snare microphone, and I created a sample from it. Let's listen to how the snare sounds with and without the samples. Let's move on the next step, which is adjusting articulation to achieve a more realistic drum kit sound. In this song, I use following articulation. Center hits. Playing the snare drum in the center produces a focused resonant sound with a clear attack and sustain. I use this articulation in all of the verses. Shallow hits. Playing the snare drum near the edge produces a thinner, more resonant sound with a longer sustain. I use it in all snare fills to have more natural, dynamic vibe. On those fills, I also use the left and right hand. Playing the snare drum with the left or right hand produces a slightly different sounds due to variations in hand position and angle. And finally, rim shots, which gives us a loud, sharp sound that is often used to emphasize important beats. In our case, I use it in all choruses and bridge. Let's focus on another step, which is reverb. Reverb is an essential element of the snare drum sound. Try adding a medium-sized reverb to the snare drum to give it more spacious and atmospheric sound. Using our envelope shaper, I shortened the reverb to around half second. In the beginning of the song and in all the choruses, I added a bit more reverb, using automation to achieve more rounded and roomy tone. Finally, a skilled drummer can use a range of dynamics, from soft, gentle strokes to powerful hard hits. Using the dynamic knob, I can lower the dynamic range from 127 to 90, while maintaining the same volume. That is one of my favorite functions, and it's a huge time saver. I will lower the dynamic range on all of the verses and then return to 127 when entering the choruses to achieve more dynamic on it. And there you have it. Remember, adjusting the pitch, articulation, adding the reverb and adjusting dynamic, that's the elements which help you to find any snare tone you are looking for. If you like the tone we created for that song, in the link below you will find the drum preset and the MIDI for this song. To open this preset, all you need is just Hertz drums with sampler with Blue and Metal Unlimited raw packs. If you don't have Hertz drums, visit our web and get free Hertz drums trial. Have fun experimenting with these techniques and creating your own great drum sounds. Don't forget to subscribe our channel if you like it.